Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're going to go ahead and get started, waiting on a few more members to trickle in. We have a number of members that have other obligations this morning as well. So I think the best thing for us to do is to maybe start mapping out and getting a good understanding of what this legislation actually at least is intended to do, and agree that this is our template moving forward as we finalize fiscal impact and some other components that play into this. I know that last time we were scheduled to meet, we were pulled away onto the floor. I see DeWitt Zimp in the audience there that was representing Pew. I know Pew wanted to present to us. They actually did present to us. They just recorded that and sent it. I hope that you have had an opportunity to review that. You do have a copy of Pew's report that went along with that in your notebooks today. I don't want to overstate or misstate Pew's position, but I think Pew is interested in making sure that pensions across the country are fiscally responsible. That means talking about lower discount rates. That means talking about stress testing pension plans, and both of those components, I think, are embraced in the bill that we have in front of us to one degree or another. Certainly the defined benefit plan, the new defined benefit plan, does have that 6% rate of return, that discount rate built into it. And I think those are the two biggest pieces. DeWitt, if you want to raise your hand and say I missed something or misspoke on something, we'll just move forward with that. I think probably it's best if I also, since it's a bill that I put together, is good morning, Senator Maury, just kind of give you a Reader's Digest version of what this bill does. Again, you have a summary in front of you that Indra has prepared side by side. I'm not going to go through that in detail, but you have that. But basically, members, what we're talking about, again, is moving from phase one of pension reform, which I think all parties have recognized as a positive step, both internally as well as externally. Third-party groups that kind of monitor pension reform across the country have recognized that our first step was a positive one in addressing the unfunded liability, in ensuring that we protect the retirements and the promises that we made to current employees, public employees in the state of South Carolina, as well as public employee retirees in the state of South Carolina. We also recognize that there was a phase two of that plan, as we've talked about often. And phase two is what we have in front of us, is changing that plan moving forward to something that is more attractive to future employees, to something that is going to remove the risk or as much of the risk as possible from the taxpayers, while also offering benefits that are going to be welcomed by the public employees going forward. So basically what this bill does is says from a specific start date that's yet to be determined, all new employees in the state of South Carolina will move into a new retirement system. The default retirement system is what's called the Wealth Builder. That is a defined contribution type plan where there is employee contributions, there are employer contributions, much like in the private sector, and those accounts grow for the benefit of the individual. They also have the option to opt into, it is not the default option, but they have an option to default into a new defined benefit plan, similar to the current South Carolina retirement system. However, that plan is what we would call a shared risk plan, and is basically built on a different chassis with a lower discount rate. Currently, we are at, we just went to 7.25. We just went to 7.25, as you know, in the South Carolina retirement system. I think everybody would agree that's still probably too high, but it's a measured approach to get that down. We moved from 7.5 to 7.25, and we placed that recommendation into PBA's hands to provide that guidance to us. And but the new plan would be based on a 6% discount rate, which is much closer, I think, to the industry, what the industry would expect in a defined contribution, to make sure that we are not building on or creating a situation where we have another unfunded liability within our pension like we currently have in South Carolina retirement system. And if we do start to get out of whack in the new defined pension plan, it is automatically closed to new employees until such time as we get it in line. So it's kind of takes from the idea that when you're in a hole, you stop digging and you stop putting more people in there. That's the design of the defined, the new defined benefit plan. That, in a nutshell, members, is the structure. There are a lot of moving parts and a lot of mechanisms underlying that. I've probably oversimplified. I know I've oversimplified, but that's kind of the basis level that we are working from. Any comments or questions on that so far? Outstanding. I think we've had a couple of other folks in the retirement planning, pension reform area have kind of identified us and have seen what we're doing. Reason Foundation, their pension integrity unit is also following this bill very closely. They have released a commentary recently about it, indicating kind of what, again, I don't want to put words in Pew's mouth and say that they've endorsed the plan by any stretch, but I think many folks out there are recognizing that the kind of the best practices approach moving forward to these pension plans are being picked up in the new plan. There are a couple of things that I would like to talk about as far as potential amendments to the plan going forward. But I guess I would leave it. Mike, what's your recommendation kind of structurally for how we should move forward here?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My suggestion is that we would use the bill now as a template, and we move forward from there. Conversations among staff yesterday with PIBA staff and also with the actuaries with Gabriel, Roeder, and Smith. We know there's some clarifying amendments that will need to take place in this. And by far the largest thing is going to be costing out a fiscal impact statement. That's really, as we well know, going to be the heavy lift. How do we pay for the changes that are going to be there? So this gives us a good working template, and then we move forward with the adjustments that are based upon those things that are to come very quickly.
Okay. Any objection to that? Okay, moving forward. I would throw out there's been a couple of pieces that we can talk about, and I don't have formal amendments prepared, but ones that I wanted to discuss with you if I could find my notes. There is a section 9-24-50, which basically states in the bill that after 1 year of service and once a year thereafter, a participant is given the option to lower their contribution in the manner and at such time as prescribed by PIBA. In no event may the participant's contribution be less than 5% or more than 15%. It's been brought to my attention that that may violate some federal codes. So I would recommend that we just strike that provision. And basically what it says is, and just keep the contributions the same for all folks. The idea there was when people went into the defined contribution plan, the new defined contribution plan, unlike many in the private sector where 401ks that most people are familiar with are really voluntary plans, right? It's something that an employee can contribute to if they like, and in many employers, can contribute if they like, and if they do wish to contribute, they can set the percentage that they contribute, and they can change that at any time. Those sorts of things. Also, many private sector 401ks have employer matches. Some companies don't match, right? The design of this plan is to require contributions, right? Just like the South Carolina retirement system. So the idea there was to require the contribution, but if the employee chose to kind of reduce their contribution over time, that they had the ability to do that. I don't think, one, as we've said, I think it's probably would be a violation because this is truly not a 401k style plan. I see Peggy in the audience. She can probably tell me it's probably more of a 401A or 401H or one of those other code sector A. So that's where that comes from. Plus, I think it's good practice to just make sure that we're getting enough contributions in there to build retirement wealth. Senator from Richland.
I would definitely be concerned about employee in terms of what the employee thought at the beginning of the employment relationship, what their retirement benefit would be, and not in the middle of the plan, we're able to change the plan. I want us to take a little closer look at, is it time for the state system to look at a plan that is a state system driven only? Because you've got other outside agencies who actually participate in this plan. And so we're creating a plan that includes everybody into a plan, rather than looking at a plan that would probably be better if it was just a state employees plan, and then provide other outside agencies options if they wanted to participate in the plan.
Yeah.
Because when we go back and we take a real look at it, there's other outside agencies over the many, many years that we did not collect enough money from them so that the plan stayed solid. That's simply because we weren't reviewing the plan. So I'm more concerned about first fixing the state employees part, and then begin to look at others like school districts and cities and other municipalities and counties who want to participate in the plan. I know that when you get to the police and those in magistrates and solicitor under one particular plan, and that's a plan that's just kind of set by itself, but the regular state employees plan, can we provide them with a plan that was our original intent and allow these others who participate options?
Sure.
Rather than we all have to participate on that same option.
Sure. Senator, that's a good point. I will point out that in the proposed legislation, it does restrict access to the plan by those third-party groups. We don't get into school districts and those sorts of things, but we do look at the third-party, the ancillary groups that have kind of gained by access in the system, water systems, hospital systems, those sorts of things. Those folks would not be included in that plan. where was I? So that was one piece. Another small piece.
Henry had his hands up.
Oh, Senator from Maury, I'm sorry.
Thank you. As I understand, these plans are transferable once this plan with this 401A type plan is transferable. If a state employee leaves state employment, they carry that plan with them.
Portability.
Portability,
Sure.
yeah.
They can move.
Transferability, sorry,
Yep.
portability.
Yep. Yep. So they'll be able to move that plan with them.
And they would be able to, at that point, it would change to something else, and they would be able to modify their contributions, potentially. I mean, if I went to work for Michelin,
Sure.
and they have a different type plan, so I could, whatever their plan is, it just sort of transmutes into whatever their plan is. If I kind of roll it into that 401K or whatever they may have.
As long as the receiving plan allows for those, they can do that. They will always have the option to move to their own individual retirement account, their own IRA account. Just like the South Carolina retirement system now, when you leave, you can cash out and just roll that to another qualified plan. They will have that ability, and that's something I think that's important in today's workforce. I mean, we've talked about that over and over again, that folks are more mobile these days, and they're shifting around, and we need to recognize that as we're hoping to recruit quality people to work in public service. Senator from Richmond.
Does the federal government allow the transfer from our plan to a 401 plan, our plan to a 401 plan, because of the caps of that particular age group, that we provide flexibility? We just don't do all the transfer at one time. It's transferable over a period of time. Case in point, we have a 401K and a 457 going from state plan to a Michelin contract plan. And I've got $150,000 in my account. I know I cannot transfer from my account because it's not a 401K account. But in order to be able to match up with their plan, have the flexibility of transferring from my plan over a 5-year or over a 6-year period of time. So I just meet the max amount coming into their plan.
I'm not sure I follow, Senator. I mean, if you roll out a qualified plan, as long as you're doing a direct rollover to another qualified plan,
Allowed to do it all?
you can do it all,
Okay.
all at one time, yeah, yeah. Another piece, these are small pieces. We talked about making that election. It's a default into the defined contribution plan, but within 60 days, they can choose to move into the new defined benefit plan. As you know, just as recently as I think the week before last, we made some changes at PBA's request to line up some of these election dates to 30 days on health care and those sorts of things that were out of sync. I would recommend that we change this as well to be a 30-day, so that everything is consistent. The other piece that I think is going to need to be probably some good discussion, and we can certainly start that here. I would hope we're going to need to get some fiscal impact on that, is how we deal with the unfunded liability. So the biggest challenge in doing these plans, let me back up. We've elected to use this as a template, so I think everybody by that believes that, at least generally speaking, believes this is the right way to go, as long as we can make the numbers work. So the biggest component of the numbers is going to be how we deal with the unfunded liability of the existing plan. Let me be very clear, and I've said this over and over again, but I'm going to say it every time we're in front of people or the cameras. The intention here is not to weaken the existing plan in any way, shape, or form. We have obligations that we have made to employees, public employees, as well as retirees. I intend to live up to those promises. So nothing that we do should be construed as a violation of that edict, if you will. Thank you, Senator. So we have to deal with the unfunded liability, and the unfunded liability, if we make no changes, every employee that joins the system is going to participate in making that system whole. That is not going to change even if the employees move into this new plan. Right now, we have a statutory rate of employer contributions that's going to increase to 18.56 when fully implemented, in addition to the 9% from the employees. That is a significant dollar amount. It is not a level or a contribution rate that we would call ADEC compliant, which is actuarially an actuarially determined employer contribution, which is basically like financing your mortgage over a certain period of time. There's a certain liability. We're paying it off at a certain point in the future, and the payment, therefore, is based on that term and the balance left. Under ADEC system, you would calculate that, or the actuaries would calculate that each year based on that predetermined date, whether it's 20 years from now, 30 years from now, whatnot. Currently, we are somewhat overfunding or prepaying our mortgage, if you will, with these employer contribution rates and the increases. I think it makes better sense, and we had some of this conversation when we passed the initial legislation. I don't know that we really dug into it as much as we probably should have, but I think we need to have that conversation here of whether or not we change to an ADEC, which is a clear, delineated pay down that is actuarially determined. I believe if we do that and we spread the liability payments across the entire employee or compensation base, new and old. There's no, this group gets that, this group gets this. I think it'll be a cleaner way to approach it. I also think it will help us ease the cost of transition. We all know there's going to be some sort of cost to this transition. We just aren't sure that we have a great handle on that yet, and that's what PIBA and the actuaries are working on with. Mike and I had a meeting with them yesterday to kind of provide them some of the guidelines that we're operating on, and they're working on that and hope to have that very soon. But that's going to be a significant piece to the puzzle when we sit it down. I've had some folks that have reached out and that are participating in pension reform across the country because they're seeing this and they like the best practices and want to put forward best practices, and they've done some modeling. I'm sure their modeling is not as detailed as what PIB is going to do because they don't have our actual numbers, but they give a general approach, and that number could be over a 20-year period. That cost to the state to transition could be as high as $6 billion in cost, but depending on how it's structured and how we're looking, it could be also as much as a $2 billion savings for us over that period of time. We just don't know yet, but it's an important conversation. Senator.
Yeah, and I'm glad we will have that conversation, but one of the things also, in having that conversation and looking down the road, I want to make sure if the market gets bad, what we've got invested in the market, we protect ourselves.
Yeah.
I would not be in a real big hurry in terms of what we now have in place, because we're more concerned about those outside employers, but they really have not paid based on the model we had their fair share for a long time. So really, they're playing and paying at the same time catch up. And I know that the market was good, and the percentage that we thought that we would make, we did a lot better with that percentage. So, but at the same time, I don't want to be in a big hurry to move it, because there's still a large outstanding liability, and once that liability is met, then I'm more comfortable with making some other adjustments. That liability that's out there it's related to those folk who are drawing money from the plan, who in fact creates the obligation. We're doing well now, but we don't have to continue to do well. I think the last conversation we had, we moved up 4 or 5 years because the market was doing good. What happens when we run into 2007, 2008, when the market is not doing well?
Sure. Great point, Senator. I think you got 2 points going on there that I'd like to comment to. One of them has to do with what happens when the market doesn't do well. And the interesting fact is that of those modeling numbers that I just described, the $6 billion in cost assumes that we're getting this 7.25% every year, year after year. I think that everybody agrees that's not going to happen, right? We're not going to get that. With the ideas that Pew has actually put forward to us on a couple of times of the importance of stress testing plans, in the modeling, when they were doing the modeling and they were asking to present it, I asked them to also model that with a couple of recessions in that period of time. So with 2 recessions over a 20-year period, of course, we don't know when they come or how they come, but as our best guess, modeling 2 recessions in there, actually with the recessions is where the savings of that $2 billion savings came in play. It was the $6 billion in cost when everything was perfect, right? But everything's not going to be perfect, and that's where we're going to gain. That's where I think we're going to gain some savings. Second part to your question about making sure that everybody participates in that liability pay down is exactly what we've been talking about with this ADEC number, and ensuring that we amortize that liability across entire public compensation. So whether or not you're a new employee coming in tomorrow under the new plan, or you've been here for 20 years, both of you, we are going to calculate both of those members in that amortization schedule and spread that across all employers. So make it clear that an agency that hires somebody is not off the hook for liability payments just because that new person is no longer in the system. They are not off the hook for the liability payments until such time as the liability is paid down. Senator from Maury.
Following that thought, so the amount paid on behalf of a new employee into the retirement system will not all go to the new employee if they choose the defined compensation plan.
There will be excess employer contributions into the system on behalf of that employee, yes.
I guess it's just,
Yeah, they will get the stated percentages of pay, their 9% contribution plus the 7% contribution. Everything says in a normal retirement rate, right? If you're going to save 10 to 15% of your pay, whether that's all you or all employer or combination, that's going to get you over time to where pension benefits would pay you. The idea is to prevent from going into a liability position where we're underfunding the plan.
What is, Mr. Chairman, what is our long-term goal? Is to phase out the present plan and go into a more defined benefit plan? What's our long-range goal, 20, 30 years down the road?
Yeah, our long-range plan, as we've kind of outlined here, is to convert to a defined contribution plan for new employees as a default, but they also have the option to choose to stay in a pension plan, right? Much like the South Carolina retirement system, with different parameters. We talked a little bit about this before you got here. That new defined benefit plan would have a lower discount rate. So right now we're at 7.25. I think that's too high. I think the industry believes that 6% is a better calculator for benefits and projection of benefits. So the new plan would base everything on a 6% rate of return. And it would also immediately shut down to new access of employees if we ever got into a liability position. And if we do get in a liability position, it's a shared risk, so both employee and employer will make up that benefit.
So given what the employers are now paying into the system annually, and given the rate, let's move from 7.25% to 6%, what is our position in terms of what the employer will continue to contribute toward the employees? An example, if we are paying in the end 18, 20% and making 6 is 24%, will we still, in changing of the plan, define exactly what our contribution is going to be toward that employee?
Yes, we're always, the state is always going to make a contribution to that
So
employee.
the question is, what percentage are we working toward that the state would actually make a contribution? Because even if you could, if we reduce the 9% the employee is making, and over the life of their investment, unless the state has a much, much larger contribution toward the employee, they really won't get a whole lot back in return as far as for retirement.
No, I would just,
So what would that actual number be?
yeah, the number is, under the bill, is 7% employer, 9% employee. So that's a 16% salary deferral, basically.
So if we did the average state employee salary, what is it, about 35 to 42,000? Okay, so after, and we moved it back to, I think it's going to 32 years for retirement. What would be their monthly benefit
Well,
over what time period?
yeah, I should have brought my calculator. We can calculate that out.
And the question would be the life table that we're using,
Yeah.
since people are living longer, and make sure we put the projection, the new projection in what the life table actually look like.
Yep.
And also, in looking at that, if we make that adjustment, will we also be making adjustment on retirees' benefits, such as health insurance? So when they use their Medicare, that their primary insurance is not so expensive, they can't afford to do it. So put all those factors in.
Yeah, I think,
into it.
yep, and I think the health insurance issue, the disability insurance issue, the life insurance issue, those are all components that we don't intend to change. We're just talking about the retirement benefits, and I would argue that, and we can calculate those projections, but again, a 16% contribution rate into your account that's yours to keep over that 30, 35 years is certainly going to generate enough money.
Well, using the 1.2% factor that they use to get the blended number times the number of years compared to what the new number would be, I would be really interested in seeing what the new number would
Sure.
be compared to what the state
Yeah,
plan is.
and I think too, and we're getting into the conversation about the value of a defined contribution versus defined benefit. One thing that I think is not talked about enough is defined contribution plans. Again, the way it's structured here, I believe, with required employee contributions, required employer contributions, and also there is a mechanism in here for an auto increase. All right, so every year, PIBA has the ability to automatically increase the contribution rate of the employee, right, up to 15%. If you look at plans across the country, 401k plans that are fully funded like that, very, very effective in generating account balances. And we talk about retirement, and I think we should talk about retirement because that is what the plans are designed to do, right? But another benefit to that is a plan like this with actual cash that they can, and it's also in the plan that there's an option at the end of retirement through the third-party providers to generate a guaranteed lifetime income for that, which kind of answers your question. But what we don't talk about enough is the actual transfer of wealth, right? In an existing pension plan, I work for 30 or 40 years. I choose either a lifetime benefit or maybe I choose a spousal benefit. I pass away, my benefit stops, or in most cases continues to my spouse for a period of time. When my spouse passes away, the money is gone. This is an opportunity to actually transfer wealth. Transfer wealth to the next generation. And that's an important piece, particularly, I think, for lower income folks that really never have a chance to do that. Whether they're living paycheck to paycheck or doing those sorts of things, this is probably the only opportunity to pass along something over and above, unless they, have gone out and purchased life insurance or those sorts of things. And I think that's a component that we miss, that's an important conversation to have. And the impact on the credit rating, sure. Senator?
Just to take it a step further, the transfer of wealth occur if the person elect to leave the system, utilize either the 401k as a mechanism to borrow money from and just repay themselves back. But if you, under our system, if you elect to get your pension on a monthly basis, it doesn't take long, based on how our system is, for the system actually to create wealth for you. But it's monthly wealth, because after about 3.5 years, all of what you've had in the system is actually gone. And if you pass away 10 years later and your spouse live another 20 or 30 years, depending upon which plan you took, if you took a plan to get 100%, 50%, or 25%, that spouse has livable income for those 30 years. Nowhere under the sun that 401k plan, unless you've got a huge amount and you invested in the right stocks and you're getting a tremendous return, that plan is going to take care of that spouse, whether they're poor or not.
No, Senator, I disagree with you.
Well,
I disagree with you on that.
I'm living the plan right now.
Yeah. No.
So I know what the plan, I know what our plan does, and I think you and I've had that conversation.
Yeah.
We won't debate
No,
this
it's certainly, our plan certainly pays out an income every month. And it certainly has the opportunity to pay out an income to a spouse. And I'm not taking away from that. I think the 401k style plans will also have that mechanism in place. What I'm talking about is if you as the employee pass away and now your spouse receives that income and they pass away, and if there is remaining funds in that account, right now there are no remaining funds. In this scenario, there could be remaining funds in that account to then pass on to the next generation. That's the piece that I'm talking about. And I would argue, I would point out to Senator that I see it every day where folks accumulate funds, and if they are consistent with contributions, and they don't have to be giant contributions, they consistently contribute funds to these types of accounts over 20, 30, 40 years. How many of those folks get to the point where they're not even drawing from them, right? They got Social Security, those sorts of things are coming in, and they're not drawing income type level necessary income from those accounts.
Our plan, Mr. Chairman, our plan, if you die before you begin to draw, your surviving person will get the lump sum benefit, and they then can opt to do the investment in the 401k, so they don't have to pay the large tax gain on it.
Yep.
And so it depends upon the system you're talking about. It works if the person is not already drawing benefits before they pass away. If you look at how you set your 401k plan up, and you do it every day, and I understand how it works. If you set it up that you're gonna max out in 20 years, and 20 years it's gone. But we're talking about a plan that you retire in 5 years, and all the funds you had in the plan, in our plan, it's gone. And so your spouse still able to draw those benefits until they die. That's a tremendous plan for a person who is a low-income person who works for the state in terms of that plan. It's based upon those salaries, even if it's 6%, 16% over the life. If you did the same analysis, the benefits are going to be quite different in terms of what they're able to draw. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
All right. Any other comments? Questions? All right. I think at this point, yeah, we can do that. We should have an impact statement from PIBA. What'd they say, Monday maybe? So hopefully we'll get some of that. Senator Maureen.
Will that impact statement contemplate the amendments that you have recommended, or that you're thinking about, or?
Yeah, we talked about most of those yesterday, I believe. If not, is there anything else I put today that we didn't talk about yesterday, Peggy?
I don't think so. I did talk to the actuary some yesterday.
Want to come up there?
Is that on?
It is. Yeah.
After talking with the actuary yesterday, as they start working on the ADAC calculations and spreading that liability to make sure that we stay consistent with where we are in funding in the current plan. Now, we may have some follow-up questions for you, but we'll reach out to you in the interim. The goal would still be to get that fiscal impact statement by next Monday, understanding that we may need to make a few tweaks to it, but I'm not aware of anything other than finalizing that ADAC compliant calculation.
As I say on stage, I'm here all week. Sure. Yeah, we can get some projections of what a 401k would accumulate to. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Everybody good? All right, then we will stand adjourned until with the call of the chair. Thank you.
Sean, are you thinking next week?